the 2026 Ceuta border crisis. Imagine waking up one morning, making your coffee, and looking out the window to find your city's population has just grown by 70%. Not over a decade, right? Not even a year. In a single day. We're talking tens of thousands of desperate people, including thousands of kids, arriving by sea and land literally overnight. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to break down one of the most staggering, rapid migration events in recent global history, the July 2026 Ceuta border crisis. 70%. It's a completely mind-boggling number, but that is the actual staggering overnight population increase that hit this city. In just 24 hours, an estimated 60,000 people crossed a single border. But, to really wrap our heads around how something of this sheer magnitude could unfold so incredibly fast, we need to zoom in on the geography, the deep history, and a very modern digital catalyst that sparked this massive human wave. Ceuta, Europe on African soil. Okay, let's dive into this and look at where we actually are. The city at the center of all this is Ceuta. It's this tiny little peninsula, roughly 7 square miles in total size. But here's the absolute kicker. Ceuta is physically located on the northern coast of Africa, jutting out from Morocco into the Mediterranean. Yet, it's a Spanish autonomous city. It's literally a piece of Europe sitting right there on African soil. Geographically, it's positioned right at the Strait of Gibraltar, where the gap between the European and African continents is just 14 kilometers of water. That's a visible, almost swimmable distance, which, as you can imagine, cranks the tension all the way up. Let's move to and see how this builds historically. 1415 Portuguese conquest, 1668 Treaty of Lisbon, 1956 Moroccan independence. You see, this geography has made Ceuta a crossroads for absolute millennia. Phoenicians, Romans, Islamic dynasties, they've all held it. But in 1415, the Portuguese conquered it. Later on, Spain and Portugal were actually united under one crown. And when they split in 1640, Ceuta said, hey, we're sticking with Spain. The Treaty of Lisbon made it official in 1668. So the takeaway here, Spain has held this exact territory for over 400 years. That is centuries before modern Morocco was even established as an independent nation in 1956. Spain's view, an autonomous Spanish city, versus Morocco's view, occupied land. Naturally, this steep history sets the stage for some fierce geopolitical tension. We're dealing with two entirely opposite realities here. Spain views Ceuta exactly how that history suggests, as a fully autonomous Spanish city. You've got about 83,500 Christians and Muslims living there in relative harmony under a local Spanish government. But Morocco, they absolutely refuse to recognize Ceuta as Spanish. To the Moroccan government, this is occupied land, plain and simple. And this fundamental clash turns the city into a permanent geopolitical flashpoint, where diplomatic crises just regularly erupt. The front-line border. It's the EU's only land border with Africa, a heavily fortified double fence guarded by Spanish forces. Because of this territorial dispute and its highly unique location, Ceuta is incredibly singular. Along with Melilla, which is another Spanish enclave further east, this is the European Union's only physical land border with Africa. It is the front line. And, well, it definitely looks the part. We're talking a heavily fortified double fence crowned with barbed wire, constantly patrolled by Spanish police and paramilitary forces. But as history shows us, fences, no matter how tall or how heavily guarded, can be breached if the pressure gets high enough. Step 1, a Supreme Court ruling on legal processing. Step 2, social media distortion by traffickers. Step 3, migrants falsely told the border is open. So what actually caused that pressure cooker to explode in July 2026? It was a disastrous chain reaction. It all started with a legal shift. Spain's Supreme Court ruled that migrants intercepted at sea trying to reach Ceuta could no longer just be immediately sent back to Morocco. They had to go through a formal legal process. Well, human trafficking networks took that ruling, slapped it on social media in Morocco, and totally distorted it. Within hours, the rumor spreading like wildfire was that the court had just thrown the border wide open. July 30th, 2026. The border collapses. And the result of that misinformation brings us to Thursday, July 30th. The border essentially collapsed. It started out like any normal day, but within mere hours, this massive, unstoppable wave of humanity descended on the territory. People were literally swimming around the breakwater at a border crossing called Tarjal. They were floating on inflatable inner tubes, climbing over jagged rocks, or just casually walking straight through open gates in the fence. The entire security apparatus was just completely overwhelmingly dwarfed by the sheer volume of human beings. Now, what's really interesting about these numbers is the sheer scale of the math here. You've got Ceuta's normal population at 83,600, compared to new arrivals of up to 60,000. In a single 24-hour window, between 49,000 and 60,000 new arrivals just poured in. It's honestly hard to even comprehend the logistics of this. Imagine a small, contained city trying to absorb a crowd nearly the exact same size as its own population, overnight. Just think about the immediate crushing strain on the streets, the infrastructure, and the emergency services trying to handle that reality. 34. We actually need to pause for a second here because behind all these massive, sweeping statistics is a truly profound human tragedy. At least 34 people lost their lives in the water that Thursday trying to make this crossing. These were people so desperate to reach what they falsely believed was an open door to Europe that they braved the unpredictable currents of the Mediterranean, and tragically, their bodies were later pulled from the sea. Demographics of the arrivals. Mostly young men, women and families, babies and children, and an estimated 7,000 minors. So who exactly made up this massive crowd? While the bulk of the arrivals were young men looking for a better opportunity, they weren't the only ones by a long shot. The crowds included women, entire families, and honestly, heartbreakingly, babies and small children. Local officials estimated that out of those 60,000 arrivals, at least 7,000 of them were unaccompanied minors. This instantly created a totally unprecedented child welfare and humanitarian nightmare for the local Spanish authorities. Let me read you this quote from a Ceuta resident. "Nobody is going out on the street. They're afraid. This is stronger and more aggressive than what we've experienced before." For the locals actually living there, the reality on the ground was genuinely terrifying. Ceuta is definitely used to border tensions. It comes with the territory. But this was a total system overload. Absolute chaos in the streets as the local government structure just buckled under the weight of tens of thousands of people wandering around a tiny peninsula with literally nowhere to go, no food, and no shelter. Spain's immediate response. The president declared it unsustainable. The PM visited, armed forces deployed, and 25,000 returned. Spain had to react fast, and they had to react heavy. Ceuta's president, Juan Jesus Vivas, declared the situation outright unsustainable and essentially begged Madrid to declare a national emergency. By Friday, Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez was on the ground. He called this an attack on territorial integrity and pointed the finger squarely at human traffickers. Spain rapidly sent in the military, armored vehicles, 200 specialized police, and 60 mainland troops just to restore basic order. And by the end of that Friday, about 25,000 people had already voluntarily turned back to Morocco. So the crucial point is, a crisis at a European land border never stays local. The diplomatic shockwaves were completely instantaneous. Look at the reactions across the board. France immediately ramped up their border checks with Spain. Italy went incredibly far, threatening to suspend Spain from the Schengen open border zone entirely. Germany started applying major diplomatic pressure, demanding Morocco take the migrants back immediately. Meanwhile, the EU offered help through its border agency, Frontex. Basically, a localized breach in this tiny African enclave threatened to unravel the entire European border policy in a matter of hours. A city of paradoxes. When the dust finally settled, thousands had gone back, and Spain and Morocco were scrambling to resecure those physical gates. But if we zoom out for a second, Ceuta is left as this ultimate city of paradoxes. On one hand, it's this beautiful Mediterranean destination, incredibly rich in Spanish culture, a place where different religions have coexisted for centuries. But on the other hand, it is quite possibly the starkest physical representation of global inequality you could ever imagine. This July 2026 collapse, it wasn't just about a court ruling or some fake news on social media. It was the inevitable, explosive clash of the immense pull of European wealth meeting the desperate push of poverty and hope from the African continent. As long as the gap between Europe and Africa is just 14 kilometers, can any fence truly hold back the push and pull of global inequality? The immediate acute crisis of July 2026 was eventually contained, sure, but the underlying tectonic forces driving it, they haven't changed one bit. As long as the physical gap separating Europe and Africa remains just 14 kilometers of water, we really have to ask ourselves, can any fence, no matter how heavily guarded, no matter how much barbed wire you put on it, truly hold back the immense push and pull of global inequality? Thanks so much for exploring this explainer with me today.